So this video is going to be some thoughts on spiritual delusion or prelest. It's going to have a lot of insight into psychedelics and I don't know, most quote unquote spirituality. And again, this is inspired by Pavel Florensky in the book Iconostasis, which I think is the most important book written in the last 100 years by far. So if you're wanting a good book, I would go and get it. Iconostasis by Pavel Florensky. He had an astounding insight into spiritual delusion and spiritual imagery. So like when people have spiritual experiences and they sort of come out of those experiences with all sorts of ideas, art, insights, inspiration, etc. Right? So what the vast majority of that, I would say almost all of it, coming out of the individual like that, is basically when you ascend into the noetic realms, like when you ascend into what I'll call heaven, the non-visible world, when you go up the ladder from the sort of earthly, mundane, physical experience, and you enter into the more transcendent experiences, what happens is that you start to shed all of your delusions. Like as you go up, all of your nonsense is shed off of you like clothing, and that clothing looks like maps, systems, chakras, insights into the nature of being, thoughts, all sorts of stuff, vivid imagery, and that's from ascending into the transcendent, right? And so the more into the transcendent you go, the more beautiful and vivid the husk or carcass of lies that sloths off of your body. And these things can be beautiful, right? But then people make idols out of them. So they think, oh, I went into heaven, I went into the noetic realm, and then the assumption is that what was seen was truth, and that's not what was seen. It's like people go into the noetic realms, and what you see is delusion coming off. And so going into the noetic realms is healthy. Going into the transcendent is healthy because of that effect of the illusion and the delusion coming off, detaching from you, like it washes. So that's what the positive benefit is that people see from going into the noetic realms, is that cleansing, right? But then as you come back down, or if you see those delusions, because a lot of them were like invisible, right? They're kind of like assumptions, like things that maybe you were in love with or attached to that you didn't even know about. And it's like the reason that you were in love or attached to them is because they're beautiful or astounding or seductive in a way, right? And they're seductive to you and potentially seductive to other people. And then when you go into the noetic realms and you see them, you're able to articulate them, embody them consciously. So you can see the delusions and then consciously embody the delusions, and therefore like gain conscious power over the delusions by using them in the regular world when you come back into it. And that's getting an idol, or that's entering into spiritual delusion or prelest. And so this is amplified with psychedelics, because those launch you into the noetic or into the transcendent like a rocket, and then all of that delusion comes off like all at once. And that's that kind of psychedelic trippy experience, is all of that illusion being purged all at once. And then what happens is, like, you unwillfully come back down, right? With psychedelics, there's not control over the experience. You come back down, and then you have conscious insight and conscious control over all of the delusions. And they're super deep delusions that have most people enamored, that rule the world. Like, so these lies or these illusions are lies and illusions that rule the world. It's like the higher you go into the transcendent realms, the sort of deeper lies and delusions that you can see. Right, so those deeper lies and those deeper illusions, as you come back down, those are mistakenly understood as truth by deluded people. So you can go into the noetic realms and sort of become conscious of how to interact with, how to use the lies that are tricking people at the deepest level of their consciousness. Like these deep lies that people are operating on in ways that they're not conscious. Like, it seems like truth. A super duper unconscious lie seems like transcendent truth, especially when everybody is operating under it, because you look around and it goes, oh yeah, everyone operates this way. And it's you come back down, and then that's where spiritual teachers and gurus and stuff start to get popular, is by espousing or reaffirming these normally unspoken lies as truth, and people eat it up. They love it. It makes them feel good. The same way that somebody who's been propagandized, like somebody who has started to like believe or buy into propaganda or be or believe into like a false reality, when somebody repeats that false reality to them, it reaffirms them. It makes them feel good. It lowers their anxiety. So the same thing happens when people, especially today, like, this is not an unknown thing in spiritual traditions. You would normally keep getting somebody to let go of or not identify with their spiritual insights, but then with the psychedelic revolution and the sort of like Eastern pagan spirituality meeting the West, where everyone just kind of like does their own thing. It's like the higher you go up into the noetic realms, the more seductive of a lie that you can shed, that you can be washed clean of. But simultaneously, each lie that you understand or that you detach from, there is an opportunity to use that lie in the lower realms as a means of power. There's a seduction. It's like you can clean yourself, but then without extreme discipline, without extreme purification of the heart, it's nearly impossible to not to not start consciously using that lie. Or to start consciously using, not even a lie, we'll call it an illusion or a delusion. Instead of just being deluded, it's like you start being deluded on purpose, which is it's compounded. It becomes worse. It's like willful. It becomes a willful act. So you can start like it's like, yeah, culture's caught up and everyone's kind of like mired in delusion and in filth, but at least it's kind of just born into it. And then if you free yourself of that, then your soul has the choice of has the opportunity to do that on purpose, to take that, instead of it being a collective sin or an ancestral sin, it becomes like a personal sin. And then if somebody actually purifies themselves when they go into the noetic realm, they go in with purity, and then they go back down into the hell realm, or into the earth. I don't know if I'll call it hell, but they come back down. And when they come back down, the same way that you shed off illusion going up, if you come back down of your own free choice, purified, then the way that you shed delusion coming out, you empty yourself coming down. And that's the power of a saint. And it's like, while the delusions that are shed going up are useless to yourself and to everyone else, although they're extremely interesting, it's extremely seductive. Like, because it's the lies that run the world at a deep level. And when I say lies and delusions that run the world, these things are what most people consider to be spiritual truths. Like deep, profound spiritual truths is actually just deep ancestral delusion. And all of that's shed when you go into the noetic realms, because that's how you clean yourself of delusion, is that you go in there, and then all of that stuff detaches, breaks off from you the same way. And that's why you become conscious of it, is because instead of you being deluded, it comes off of you, you're cleaned, and then you can see the delusion. And then with purification, there's an opportunity to actually let go of the delusion. And so then that's the property of a saint, is when you go into the noetic realms and then coming back down willfully. So that's different than coming down off of like drugs, right? There's like a non-willful descent. When you come back down willfully, then there's a self-emptying. And the self empties on the way down, the same way that it sheds lies on the way up. And then that emptying is the grace that maintains the world. So when people say this, the saints maintain the world, it's through the self emptying, or the kenosis of saints, and that is the energy of God entering into the world. And those are the contact points where, like, breath or life is entering into the world and maintaining everyone, sustaining everyone and everything. is through that emptying process. And so that's exemplified in the willful descent and emptying of Christ. So as God descended out of the transcendent into the earthly realms, the willful choice was a complete kenosis, a complete emptying, a complete self-sacrifice. So when you see that when another human does that or attains that, that's when you see the pattern of Christ and the pattern of God in other humans. And so for the most part, nearly all spirituality and truth and insight on earth is only the ascent. It's only the ascent. And so the ascent, the actual climbing into the transcendent or the noetic realms, only generates delusion. And then the descent is where the salvific grace actually emanates from the body. So to actually do that, there's no ascent required, like wherever somebody's at. That's why the path is one of like humbling, lowering, and self-emptying at whatever station that a person is at, is what actually gives to the world. And then the individual ascending is potentially great, and I think potentially good for the world, because it's how you would free yourself of delusion. But that path or that activity of going up requires like extreme purification and extreme self-restraint, because that generates the seductive powers and the seductive insights and the seductive maps and understandings and everything about hell, about delusion. Whereas like self-sacrifice generates the grace of God, because whatever level that you're at, if you lower yourself to a lower level, then the heaven that is in you comes out. So no matter what level, it's always possible to go lower, and then that is how to get the heavenly or the transcendent to emerge out of the being, which is I don't think now that I think about it, there's probably nothing good that comes out of the ascent. It only generates, it paradoxically only generates lies. It only generates illusion, because it's like you start shedding illusion. It's like shedding. It's like you become infectious with the ascent. Ascending into the noetic realms causes an infectious shedding of seductive illusions, and then self-emptying or kenosis causes a salvific grace, sort of. And anyway, yeah, so Iconostasis, Pavel Florinsky. Great book. Amazing book. Great. It's a great book. Highly recommended book. Super good. Great.